I am here with my friend from the US, Sherry. Hello, Sherry.
Hello, how are you? Good to see you, Andy.
Yes, I'm doing okay. I'm happy seeing you because I like science, although I don't understand it. But you talk about science and I can understand it, which is cool.
Well, I think science is amazing. It's fun. It's a great way to explore God's created world, and it fascinates me. I think it fascinates everyone, as long as you don't put those 12-letter words in there that, scare everybody.
Yeah. No, I really, really like science. I don't get it. I don't understand it. I'm fascinated. I'm drawn to it because it's the building blocks of everything we see around us. We're talking together because of science at some point, thinking, oh, if we tap something, someone can hear it, and if we apply electrical current, which we've now just designed, now you can hear the tapping, and now we've got high definition videos.
Yes, that's right. It's from the beginning of creation. When God made Adam, he made all the animals and he asked Adam to name them all according to their kind. So Adam was the first scientist in respect of classifying creatures according to
Ooh.
their unique features. So even way before, our scientists who are known to do that, Carlos Linnaeus and others, yeah, Adam did that. And that's how we see God's order and or an organization. So it's really a wonderful thing.
I didn't think about Adam as the because yes, exactly that.
Yes, that's right. That's
Yes.
right. He would not have used the Latin names because Latin was not, I don't know what he spoke, but likely not Latin. But
No.
he did name them according to their kinds, which means he grouped them according to the types of creatures that God made. And so, yes, it required observation skills and scientific skills.
That's really exciting. I would never have thought of that, but then I'm not a scientist like you. And for folks who haven't met you, because we had you on before, which is great, just give us a quick bit of background about what is it that how where do you fit with science?
Yeah, so I actually was educated in pre-medicine, but I worked at Walt Disney World as a marine biologist. I The university I went to didn't have a marine biology major, and so I took a lot of extra courses because that's what I wanted to do. And I worked as an aquarist in their large aquarium, primarily with the predators, and studied animals. And as I studied animals, I began to just see God's fingerprints. Then we homeschooled our children, and during that time, I taught them all the different sciences and began to really appreciate all the sciences because they point to God's design. And so that is my heart to share with people how, as believers, we shouldn't be afraid of studying our world, because it does give glory to the Creator. It does point to the Creator, and we can see the uniqueness and the complexity in chemicals and in the order and fundamental movement of gravitational force and all the other forces, and then the design of creatures. So it is a fascinating thing. And so I write curriculum for create Christian organizations and homeschool, and then I write other books that are apologetic in style for again that same theme, loving science and seeing God's fingerprints.
Excellent. I want to talk about the book, which I've got a copy of, which is fab. We'll come on to that
Okay.
in a moment because it's fabulous. All I'm going to say is it's so good. It arrived in our home, and my wife, I haven't seen this book since it arrived because my wife took it. We'll come back to that. But science. So last time we talked about stuff that glows,
Yes, yes.
bioluminescence.
That's ooh, yes, very good.
So let's just go back over that because there was some at the time. I mean, it's nearly a year ago, but there was some like groundbreaking, new revolution, understanding research on the fact that animals can glow, kind of thing.
That's right. Yeah, the more that scientists are studying that ability, bioluminescence, the more they're seeing its unique design or the way that it works, because it is a cool type of light. Your regular incandescent light bulbs, if you touch those, you know that they're hot. And most light production produces heat as well. And organisms, if they're going to produce light, they cannot produce heat with that light because it would burn their tissue. And so bioluminescent organisms use a special set of chemicals that help them to glow. And one of the organisms in our book that just recently came out that we'll talk about is a deep sea anglerfish who has a glowing section of bacteria on the tip of her dorsal spine that she uses like a fishing lure. And so those organisms that live there in a symbiotic relationship with her will glow, but she can actually cover them up when she wants to be hidden. But when she wants to go hunting, she opens them up. And so the way that they create their glow is very similar to these glow sticks. Have you ever seen a glow stick before? To make it glow, you have to bend it, what happens is it's got two different chemicals. One is an outside liquid, and then inside this tube is a thin glass vial that has another liquid. And so when I bend it, I'm breaking the glass inside, and then you shake it up to mix those chemicals, and you see instantly this glowing reaction. And so this is bioluminescence. It is a cool type of light that organisms naturally have. And we see it all over the world. We see in bacteria, we see in insects, we see other organisms that can fluoresce, which is another type. If you've seen certain animals that might look brownish just to the naked eye, but under fluorescent light you see these multicolors. They're the what we're able to understand that our animals are able to do is it's just a beginning, because we don't have the sensory receptors that other animals can do, that can see that fluorescence, or that can identify to a greater degree the glowing light that we see here. So it just points to God's great complexity, because from bacteria, which are the simplest organisms in creation, to all other creatures, all bacteria can do this. And so they're the simplest, which means they're not simple. And I love to say this, that God's creation does not go from simple to complex, but from complex to extremely complex. There is no simple organism, which then says, well, then how did they get here? How could it have popped up from some primordial ooze? It could not have. And therefore, again, when we see complexity and order and organization, we see evidence of a designer and a creator. So bioluminescence is a testimony to God's creation.
I love it because, of course, you touch a light bulb, 20, 30 years ago, you
Yes,
would know about it. A 100-watt light bulb, you'd have a burned finger. I've got LED lights around me. They are not cold. They do get
that's right.
hot.
Right.
And so,
And we took a clue from the bioluminescence to say,
yeah.
oh, you can create. The inventors of the LED bulbs said there is a possibility to make light without heat. How do we model that? And so when we study creation, it gives us ideas. The same way that Velcro came to be. We studied the uniqueness of burrs that stuck on people's pant legs, and how do these things stick? And then they ended up developing something that helps us, that pretty much you can't go anywhere without finding something that's got Velcro on it. And so that hook and loop tape is everywhere. So yes, LED lights were inspired by bioluminescence.
But then I think about, you got a fish and it's swimming around in the sea, and it lights up. We're not talking about a ready meal, because if it's going to get hot, it's going to cook. It's like, great, salmon to go.
That's right. That's right.
It wouldn't work, would it?
No, 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 no. That would not be helpful, because the animal would then die. And you're right. We'd have our dinner ready to go. But that is not the case. And again, they cannot produce heat in their tissue. Otherwise, they would not survive. So it has got to be a cool production light. So from fireflies to all kinds of glowing creatures in the ocean, we see that. Even mushrooms, which are fungi, a completely different class or phylum of organisms, they are able to glow as well. And so very, very unique ability. And it's cool.
All we
Literally.
really, yeah, well, it is. All we really do is copy stuff, don't we? We just think, well, that's really good. But even that glow stick in your hand, it's not. I know that gets ever so slightly warm, because there's a reaction going on, because we
Yes.
haven't perfected what God did for the fish.
That's right. Correct. Yes, because this glow stick will only glow until the chemical reaction is done. In fact, I tell kids, when you have a glow stick and you want it to last, stick it in your freezer, because it actually slows down the chemical reaction, and it will last longer, because it's truly a chemical reaction happening. And as long as those chemicals combine, they are going to create energy as a byproduct, which is the glow in this case. And so, yeah, but it doesn't renew itself. And these organisms are able to renew their ability to glow by producing more chemicals and more chemicals, because it's a requirement for survival. And so God gave them that ability, that the genetic capability to produce those lights, so that they can continually create the chemicals that are necessary to mix together when they want to mix them together. So that they can glow and survive, because it's a survival requirement. It helps them find food. It helps them identify other members of the same species, or signal other members of the same species. I know fireflies have unique flying patterns. And so their flying patterns, based on the different kinds of fireflies, will signal other fireflies that, hey, I'm over here. And that's a very important life survival technique. And God knew they needed that.
This is what I love about science. I really don't understand most of it, but what I do think is, wow, this is really cool. And I don't understand it, but I can just sit and admire it, because it blows my mind.
Yeah, me too. Me too. I can sit and stare at my children don't like to take walks with me because I take times longer to do it because I'm like, look at this lichen. It's fascinating. Do you know? And it's just and if I don't know something, wow, we have the internet right there available to get more information about it. But there's so much to learn, so much to know. Indeed, everything that has been discovered has not been discovered. There's so much more that we can learn. And it points again, the more we discover, the more we identify, the more we see God's magnificence, God's glory, because he spoke it into being. And boom, all of that complexity came to be, which is just, it just expands his magnitude because it said, oh, and he did this too. Oh, and he did this too in its complexity. So it's just a wonder to me.
I was just thinking about how, the fish you mentioned with the sort of thing that comes out of its head. Obviously, that's in Finding Nemo. We've seen the film.
Of course we did.
See
Yes.
a fish.
Yes, that's right.
And everybody wanted clownfish because I want a Nemo fish. But anyway, the thing is that fish can't just think, okay, I've used up the light, I'm going to switch it off. It's not going to go to an EV charge point and recharge again. That stuff doesn't happen. So somewhere God had to design it for that fish to have a light that it can switch off and on, regenerate, which we can't do that yet.
No, we can't. We don't have the capabilities. We don't have the genetics for it, frankly. So this is living organisms that are able to do this. And these and actually, like I said, with the deep sea anglerfish that we wrote about, it is not able to produce the light the way that it needs on its little dorsal spine because it actually houses bacteria that live there that glow, and the bacteria glow. And so how does it know when to let the bacteria glow and when to cover it? How does it know that it has bacteria? Does it know? It's more than we can comprehend. There's another amazing creature. It's called a Hawaiian bobtail squid, probably about this size, and he houses two little pouches that contain glowing bacteria, different species of bacteria, and when they glow, it glows. But what happens is these creatures, when they glow, they eventually will tire out. And so this guy is a nocturnal hunter. He has coverings over those pouches. And so when he comes out to hunt at night, they glow, and he uses his little coverings, his little shutters to adjust the amount of light that they produce because he has a sensor on his back that can identify how much light there is at night, whether the moon is out or covered, and he adjusts them so he's able to hunt like a stealth bomber. He is completely unseen. He doesn't create a shadow because they make that glow. And then he pumps them all out and in the morning, triggered by the sunrise, because he can't let them continue to reproduce in that pouch. And he buries himself and he sleeps all day long. And while he does, the bacteria reproduce again and again and again until there's enough of them there to glow, and it's nighttime and he comes out and he hunts again. Absolutely fascinating. These two creatures cannot survive without each other, and they're both extremely complex in their ability. How do they find each other? How do they know? How does this guy know to pump them out? How does this guy know to adjust the shutters? Fascinating complexity. And we're talking bacteria and basically a clam. I mean, really, when you're talking genetically speaking, these guys have this ability that is complex. And again, when we see order and organization and complexity, there's a designer that made them that way.
I love it. I can't shut the light out when I'm going to bed. I've got blackout blinds and curtains, and I'm still getting light in. And 2025, like seriously, can we not design a curtain that actually blacks out the light? We can't even do that.
That's right. That's right. We need to study more about creation. Who in the created world can do this? Where are those critters? And so we got to copy them because they're able to do it. It's a survival characteristic for them. So maybe if survival was on the line, we would be able to do it. Block out that sun.
Yes, right. Let's get to the book because this was really exciting when it arrived in the post.
Yes.
And I'm just going to really describe the front cover because I think the front cover probably sums up, I think, what's inside. I'm going to say I haven't read the book yet because this arrived beautifully packaged. My wife said, "Ooh, I like this," and it disappeared to her bedside table. So I had to go and retrieve it today just so I could talk to you and hold the book. But even at the front cover of the book, I don't know if you can see that. You can see just about the front of the whale. You got some fish, okay? But the fish have got bubbles around them, and you can feel the bubbles. You can feel the bubbles on the book. It is so exciting.
Yeah, there's some nice embossing on here just to make it feel more enjoyable. And then what I love is the table of contents because it's a series of 5 short stories, and it chronicles or you follow the life story of 5 different creatures in the ocean based on their depth. So you can see the table of contents goes deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. Where there's our little deep sea anglerfish at the bottom. She's our fifth story. But we start with our Astrid, our sea star, who is found in the tide pools, which are shallow. And so we're highlighting a creature at various depths as you go, which is really, to me, it's a really fun table of contents. You can kind of see, but each story highlights or chronicles some adventures in their lives. And then we actually have an opportunity to make a tie-in to creation so that you can see God's hand. Now, these are designed to be middle grade readers. But again, like you said, I'm finding a lot of adults are wanting to read this out to their children or for themselves because they're fun. They're really interesting stories. They're short bites and they're unique animals, not your most commonly commonly seen animal in stories. But for example, we're talking about our peacock mantis shrimp. A peacock mantis shrimp is like the superhero of the ocean. That's this little guy right here. And they have super sight, super power. Their punch is so strong that it's faster than the speed of sound and actually produces some mock sound waves when it hits. And so that's how they can crunch into clams and other hard things. You keep them in captivity, they will actually crack the aquarium glass and break out. Their superpower. And so we talk about that, but we say God doesn't judge us by how big or strong we look. He looks at how we are inside. And we have these questions that then after you've read the story that just you can reflect on about what does that mean for us? And so we even have a little takeaway. God often uses the least likely people to do great things with our hidden strengths because we want this to be a more personal reflection because there's so much for us in God's creation besides just a fact or a number or something. There's information for us in his world. And so we want to make that more exciting for kids and adults.
Yes. My wife is not middle grade. What's middle school? Is that sort of 8, 12?
8 to 12, 8 to 13. That's right. Yes.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
She's not in that bracket. My 21-year-old son is not in that bracket. And he was like, ooh, I like this. But here's the thing. I was taking a walk the other day. It was really, really cold. There was a very heavy frost. The kind of heavy frost, it's almost looking like snow, that it isn't. Okay. And I'm walking along thinking, okay, this looks beautiful. But then it occurs to me, not it looks beautiful, but it does. But I'm able to enjoy the beauty of the frost. And actually, it has something intrinsically valuable that makes me go, that's really beautiful. But then you have to ask the question, well, why am I appreciating basically cold? It's the physical interpretation of cold. That's what I'm appreciating. But why would I do that?
Yes. Well, again, we have been created in God's image. And so that's what separates us from the animals. I've been talking about animals and uniqueness, and I kind of use a little anthropomorphism in there, but they're not. They're very different than the way we as God's people have been created. One of the reasons being made in his image gives us different character, and the ability to identify beauty is something that we have that no other animal has. When I say other animal, I mean no animal has, because we're made in God's image. And God is a God of beauty as well as design, magnificence. So when you see that stunning frost that just maybe sparkles like diamonds and it's crisp, you can appreciate that stunning beauty. You're not going to see a dog pause and magnify at that and go, that's gorgeous. It's just, too busy sniffing stuff. When I see a rainbow on a sunset or a gorgeous sunset, I don't see the squirrels pausing to admire that, or the dolphins popping their heads up out of the water to look at the sun. That ability to appreciate beauty is one of the things that is a clue that we are not animals. We are created uniquely and made in God's image. There are many animals that are intelligent and that can reason and solve puzzles, but that's something different. We are something more. We've been given something more because we're made in God's image. And beauty, like you said, is something that sets us apart. It helps us to see. Justice is another one. The understanding that there is just, there is good, there is right. And that is not something that animals understand. So it's a testimony. So when you marvel at something or you say, that's beautiful, you're really giving God glory by saying, this is something unique to me, that God made me different, special in this world. And he made the world beautiful for me to enjoy it. So same thing with flavors and colors. And we don't need all the different flavors of food, but we have them because God wants us to enjoy the beauty and the richness of his creation.
I always think when you read the creation account in the scripture, God makes us, but he didn't make all the animals. He spoke the animals into being, and yet he handcrafts us. And
Formed
that's
us,
one of
yeah.
those things that makes me think, that right there, we are wonderfully and uniquely made.
That's right. That's right. And so much of the culture screams at us that we are no different. And I just think it's such a sad thing because there are evidences from a scientific standpoint to show how we are unique, and we are set apart. And I love that you said that, more formed and molded and knit together, versus just spoken to being like all the rest of the creation that's around us. We are set apart because God wants to have us as a relationship with him. So yeah, it's amazing. We need to be talking about this.
Here we do. I just want to go back to the table of contents again, because again, I haven't seen this book yet, apart from the cover, and it whisked away like kind of speed of sound, to be honest, before I got to enjoy it. But the fact that the table of contents is really boring. Okay, a table of contents tells you what's in the book. All right, it's a boring thing. It's kind of useful if you want to find a certain chapter, and yet even the table of contents in this book is not boring. Even that
That's right.
is a lesson. It's really cool.
Well, and this is another reason, I have a master's in education. I love teaching, but the best way to teach is through story. And we learn and remember and are engaged by story. I mean, even Jesus told parables and stories so that the people could understand what he was saying. And so we learn by stories. There's to me, that's the best way to instruct. And you may have heard of historical fiction as a type of reader that you can get, a genre. I kind of want to start and continue. We're actually planning on this scientific fiction where it's not sci-fi, which is also its own little genre, which is cool. But this is just fiction. These are fiction stories, but the setting is teaching you science in a very natural, very engaging way. And we use some big words in here. We're going to use chromatophores, and we talk about what they are, and we have little explanations. But one of our creatures is a mimic octopus, which is, most of us know that octopuses can change their color and change their texture to match their background. But a mimic octopus goes even further. A mimic octopus can change its shape to mimic another creature, and then it will copy the swimming patterns and behavior of that creature. So if it feels threatened, it will instantly turn into a flounder and look like a flounder and swim like a flounder so it's not eaten. Or it will, if it wants to threaten something or scare something away, it will bury itself in the sand with a couple of its tentacles sticking out and make them striped in color so it looks like a banded sea snake, which is a very venomous animal, and behaves like the sea snake. How do these guys know? In fact, there are, I believe, 14 different animals that they've been identified officially to take the shape of and behavior of. But there are anecdotal stories that the divers have said way more than that. So these are, again, genetically speaking, very, very similar in design to a clam, but octopuses have fascinating abilities to do something way more than just camouflage, but they use their chromatophores, which are specialized cells, to change their color and at an instant, and the numbers of cells that they change to match a pattern that they're trying to copy is fabulous, fascinating. But we'll throw that word chromatophore in there just like it's any other word and explain it through the story so that you're not feeling like you're reading a textbook. We don't want this to be at all feeling like a textbook, but we want to inform and excite and build wonder by story. And again, story is one of the best ways to instruct and then remember. We will hopefully remember some of these. And again, our hope is not just remember, wow, that's a cool animal, but wow, God made that animal, and then God made me, and that makes me special.
Yes, I love it. And for people like me who perhaps have an enjoyment of science and not necessarily a comprehension that's very good of it, there is a glossary at the back, which
There
I
is.
found, which
That's
makes
right.
me very happy because I just think it's a what now?
It's
And
what
yeah,
now?
So yeah. Oh, what now? That should be the first one.
That's right.
Andy B's confused. But it's great. I love this book and I'm really thrilled by it. I like reading. I know everything's going online these days with Zoom culture and a digital culture, but there's something about a page and a paper because you can mark it if you dare do that thing. We've got a bookmark so we can find the place, but I also like to fold over pages and some people will write on them, which other people will be mortified by. But you know
Yes,
what?
yes.
Books become part of your character almost.
Absolutely. Well, and this is a completely side subject, but in education, we are learning now that, well, we knew this, but now we're seeing it, that hard copy reading books, you're actually engaging more of your brain versus reading an ebook, for example, or watching a movie or something. You're actually engaging more of your brain, making it work a little bit harder, which helps you remember more. Whenever you're taxing that brain, you're building connections and building little ruts and pathways that will create better memory. So it's actually a better way to learn. And so hope there's a resurgence and hopefully it will continue. There's nothing wrong with ebooks. There's nothing wrong with media. In fact, we need media for a lot of ways because there's a lot of people who process things in a better way if they hear it and see it. But we cannot do it at the expense of getting rid of hard copy books because this is how our brains engage so much more. So in conjunction with all the amazing technology that we have, we don't want to lose sight of that hard copy book for education, for remembering, and for really that there's just something about cozy, curling up on a chair with a cup of something warm and reading a book that's a hard copy book.
The most obvious question I have to ask is, have you got a favorite chapter in this book? Is there one you think, I like this one a lot?
I think my favorite would be the mimic octopus because of his fabulous abilities. But there's something about each one. We have a humpback whale, and we've given them names. We have Astrid, the multicolored sea star. Now that's a creature too that's really cool. Multicolored sea stars. Most of us are familiar with sea stars, and I have a couple sea stars right here. Here's one that's, of course, long been dead. I couldn't, what we have when we can showcase things without an aquarium are just the remainder pieces of a creature and the hard parts. And so none of these other animals I have access to, like a deep sea anglerfish, Luna, Wendell, the humpback whale. Obviously, I can't bring a humpback whale here. And the
No.
mimic octopus, Dexter. And then we have Maximus, our peacock mantis shrimp. But then the sea stars are pretty easy. When they die, their hard body parts remain behind. And one fascinating thing about sea stars is they can regrow body parts. And so that's that. Again, there's something fascinating about each one. That's one. And so, interesting anecdote about this. This is not in the book, I don't believe. Maybe it is. Oyster fishermen in Greece years ago, like back in the 30s and 40s, didn't like sea stars because sea stars would feed on on oysters. So sea stars are fascinating. They're predators and they will go for clams or oysters and they'll wrap around them really tight. And they've got these suction cups that are located all along their rays, and they'll open up the animal just enough that they actually extend their stomach out of their mouth into the shell, digest the animal outside of their body, and then bring their stomach and the digested material back in their mouth, which is actually kind of gruesome, but fascinating. But they will regrow arms. And so when the oyster fishermen would pull up their nets and get the oysters and they'd find a sea star, they'd chop it in half and throw it back in the ocean. Well, all it takes is a small part of the central disc and it will grow other arms. And so they were actually increasing the population of sea stars by doing that because they didn't know their marine biology. I have right here, this is a 4-rayed sea star, but when you look at the back, you can see this right here is another arm that's starting to grow. And so they will regrow their body parts. It's a survival characteristic for these guys because it's okay to lose a ray, and survive the rest of their body, so they can get away. So fascinating. Again, I don't have a favorite animal. I have a favorite thing about each animal. And that's my favorite about the sea stars.
I love it. Wonders of the Ocean Realm. How do people get hold of this book?
So it's pretty much found anywhere where books can be sold. You can get it from Amazon. It's available there. You can go to Tyndale House. They're the publishers. Fabulous publishing company, Tyndale, and Tyndale.com. And they have that available. You can get it on Barnes and Noble. Again, mostly where pretty much every book is sold, you can find this book, Wonders of the Ocean Realm.
I'm looking forward to my wife releasing this book so I can physically actually read it. She's not here, which is probably the only reason I've got it in my hands. But my little endorsement would be it's really good for tactile touch. At the front is brilliant. And even the table of contents is exciting.
It is. It is.
Which
It's my favorite table of contents I've ever seen in a book. And I thought it was a brilliant idea. And so that was not mine, but loved the idea. So a great way to see again, yet again, another way to understand and get your brain around where these creatures live, not just in the water.
There you go. And a B recommendation. Even though I haven't read it yet because my wife's nicked it. Wonders of the Ocean Realm by Tricia Goyer and Sherri Seligson. Thank you so much. And Vlad, let me get this right. Vlad Stankovic. Honestly,
That's right.
the artwork, which is the only bit I actually got to see, is just brilliant.
Yes, Vlad did a phenomenal job of just, I mean, bringing you underwater. I mean, we did not want it to be very cartoon-like. We wanted it to feel like you were swimming in the water with these creatures. Oh, here's a great image right here. So this is our mimic octopus looking like a sea snake as he's behaving in the water. So yeah, he did that. What a great image. What a great illustration. It just brings you down in the water, which is great.
It's beautiful. Go and get yourself a copy of that. You will not regret it. Sherri, thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk to you. I really can't. I love science. I just don't understand it. But that's where people like you help, because you take my lack of skill and you make it sort of accessible, which is what's brilliant.
Oh, thank you, Andy B. It's very good to be here. Super excited. I love talking about it with you. And yeah, thank you for having me.
Cool. Sherri, thank you.
Yeah.